Good afternoon, everybody. Well, I'm your host, Nick Haslam. Saturday afternoon, early Saturday evening, 6:07 p.m. on Saturday, the 7th of February. Today, Corona and Lime. Gonna have a beer with you guys. So I want to change things up a little bit. And what I want to do is tune in, brother, to a couple of things that have been threads and doing research on it. And get into this creative, co-creative energy of following things that directly show up and doing research based on that. And this is something that I've found like, following that and creating an alignment with that and kind of listening to that as much as possible and acting upon kind of information in that field is something that's worked really well for me. So when I did my first Toltec vision quest in Colombia, which is out of the Mexican tradition, I woke up and I'm pretty sure it was the second morning, if not the third morning. Pretty sure it was the second. And my heart was on the earth. And when I woke up, I got the message that the Black Plague is here. And that's not a frame of reference that I've got. I don't think like that at all. And then so I was like, okay, well, what do you mean the Black Plague is coming? And the direct message that I received was, no, the Black Plague is here. And if I'm being honest with you guys, I haven't really, I've thought about it over the years, but I haven't really explored it. And I take very seriously the Toltec Vision Quest path. And you might, I guess it could be argued that I don't take it seriously enough if I haven't followed up on that. But I guess now is the right time to be exploring it. So I'm going to play a 6-minute video on the Black Death from Jason Bashir's of Icke, which is to do with 1347, I believe. And so what we've been told about the Black Plague is not correct, as far as I'm aware. But I am on this journey with you guys, still learning, and taking the beginner's mindset into this. And then after that, going out of my wheelhouse a little bit, but also taking this same energy into it. Excuse the language, I'll sharpen it up over time. Still getting used to this. But so Saturn has come up as a in my own journey. So I did a 30-day Noirao dieta. Some really big stuff came up in that. And one way to simplify that the spirit of Noirao would be that it shines a divine light on the deepest, darkest shadow. A lot happened over that month, but one of the things that happened was, and I'll get more into this later, but tracking this evil energy and being involved in like a spiritual cosmic war during the shamanic ceremony with the shamans involved, and it was like a whole thing. And it was to do with the entity behind Saturn, whether it's Saturn itself, but the very direct linkage was the entity behind Saturn. So it's something that I want to explore. And if you're familiar with George Cavassal's work as well on natural law, LORE, he talks about the chakra system being a technological control system overlay of our natural energy systems. And he goes through a process of connecting with our real energy centers and in our heart soul essence, and removing contracts with anything that's not in our indirect alignment with the highest good of our heart soul essence, and removing the chakra system. And he says that the 7 rings of Saturn are those 7 chakras. And that's his way of going beyond the New Age deception and going and New Agey stuff. People like Mark Passio, Natural Law LAW, also teach about going beyond the New Age, but then also talk about chakras, just to highlight some of these differences here. So, I guess what I want to do now is take you on a journey where I don't know what the outcome is going to be because I haven't seen either of these videos, or if I've I think I may have seen the upcoming one a long time ago or whatever. But yeah, the one on Saturn was recommended by a group of sovereign citizens. No, just actually a part of the shadow work group that I did with Mark Passio and One Great Work. We've got a bit of an Aussie One Great Work group going on. So yes, that was shared there. So without further ado, let's see what happens here.
The Great Black Death Plague. 1/3 of the world's population gone in 4 years. Entire cities emptied. Some communities not touched at all. 673 years is a very long period of time. Our historians today will sit and look you in the eye and tell you things about what caused the bubonic plague, what caused the lesions, what caused people to turn purple and bloat and die in agony. It wasn't a fast death. The stench in the cities, the contamination of the water and food sources, whole families seeing 40 to 50% of their members gone. Historians will look you in the eye and tell you what they think is a series of facts about that plague, but it's not true. 673 years ago, people wrote what they saw. We have those records today. They're in the specialist literature. You're not going to see them in textbooks. I'm going to provide them for you in this video. The implications of what people saw completely changes the dynamics of our reality. There is no way you can believe you live in a Newtonian physics world after taking into consideration the material in this video, what happened and what these things were in the skies. Your frames of reference are going to want you to say they're UFOs, but they weren't. Our world is not what you think. Sometimes the truth is just horrifying. The Black Death of 1347, actually 1345, 6, 7, 8, 9, it's conventionally dated at 47, when it arrived to Europe, the Western world. This plague killed 1/3 of the human race and innumerable livestock and animals. The official historical version, though, is a lie. Rats from China did not carry the contagion to Europe. The truth is censored because it is harrowing. Historian Brambley notes that in 1346, a column of fire was seen in the heavens for some time. Today, we dismiss this as a comet. Ships returning from the Mediterranean bring stories of comets, chaos, strange diseases in the Orient and the Far East. Our establishment sources today claim that rats on these vessels brought the Black Death plague to Europe, but this is not what the people of the time recorded. Millions perished in China, the East, India, the Mediterranean, Africa, and then in Europe it arrived, but not alone. Manly P. Hall wrote that at the time it was popular for Christians to pray to God to keep them safe from the plague, the Turk, and the comets. William Brambley in The Gods of Eden on page 181 wrote, "The greatest puzzle about the Black Death was how it was able to strike isolated human populations which had no contact with earlier infected areas." C.W. Dalton in The World All Wrong on page 503 wrote, "The Black Death of the 14th century, which spread almost over the entire earth, wiped out 1/3 of the world's inhabitants in 4 years. The malady was called the Black Death because of the dark purple color of the victim's skin in the final stage of the disease. Not a real disease, but a biological weapon." Gianfranco Degli Esposito mentions records of strange cigar-shaped objects seen in the skies over Europe that slowly cross the sky, sometimes at very low altitudes, dispersing in their passage a disturbing mist. He and others in this year attribute these sightings to the Black Death's origin. Gianfranco wrote, "Immediately after the appearance of these shocking events, the epidemic exploded in that area. Animals fell from the sky, their rotting, decomposing carcasses making the air fetid around Florence, spreading the plague. 60,000 people alone died in the city of Florence." In today's UFO research, we find the cigar-shaped UFOs prominent in sightings around the world, near the moon, and even in the mysterious shadow of the Mars footage before our probes ceased transmitting. We interpret these cigar-like vessels by our frames of reference, but the truth is that these may not be ships at all. Vast appendages of an unseen apparatus that sprays apocalypses onto the human race. The Black Death is only one instance of our overseers involved in civilization resets. The link is below for 10 Archaic's books that will forever change your perception of reality. Our world is not what you think. And it is a mantra of the Archaic's research that one who is properly informed is not easily deceived.
Well, some further research for me to do there, and of course, all I'll say is that all I'm doing is relaying what came up on my Vision Quest. I've got no interest in creating any fear or anything like that. That's not what I'm doing here. Just yeah, I mean that's pretty full on. So I mean, it obviously makes you think about Tic Tacs and Lockheed Martin technology and 0-point energy technology and some of this advanced quantum technology that's going on right now. So if anything, it's more of a call to to come and create solutions aligned with humanity. So if anything like that does happen, we can mitigate it. But yeah, it's been basically 10 years since I received that message. So yeah, still exploring that one. So the next one is on Saturn. And I'm very aware that other researchers, George Kavassalos, David Icke, they all talk about Saturn. I am relaying the best that I can my direct anecdotal experience. And my experience was that I tracked this evil, at the time, and what I still feel is like pure evil, like worst of the worst. I tracked that to the entity behind Saturn. So let's see what that's all about here.
To persuade my viewers.
And yeah, this guy's voice does take a bit of getting used to. This is Library of the Untold. So thank you to this guy. And just out of synchronicity, synchronicity, he just happens to be on Archaic tomorrow, which that I didn't know about that when I started putting this on. So I put a few minutes on and decided to learn about it with you guys. So let's learn about Saturn, shall we?
Into believing anything. That's not my job, because I am not an expert. I am just the curious ant willing to risk his own little nugget of sanity. We should listen to the experts, but therein lies the problem. They die. All too often, the experts die before their findings pass through enough generations to see the light of day. And once they are dead, silent ignorance is bliss for those in control of the current worldview narrative. Sometimes it takes a curious ant to dig up the dead to resurrect a theory laying dormant. And if the theory does turn out to have earth-shattering implications, well, it's a good thing an ant is capable of carrying 50 times its own body weight. Because when the excavator is dead, we like to bury the messenger.
I'd say it's electromagnetic because I can identify.
Okay, you call it a ring maker.
Yeah,
You see the craft.
yeah, I call it a ring maker.
When I would go to the weird shit section at half-priced books, I would always see ring makers of Saturn behind glass with the other rarities. I kind of like the unhinged material and often looked at it like Wayne looked at that white Fender Strat. I finally snagged it up one day and I read the first line. Presented herein are pictures of immensely large, enormously powerful extraterrestrial space vehicles located in the vicinity of Saturn and its moons. These photographic revelations are reinforced by and are consistent with scientific data extended over the centuries as far back as Galileo. Okay, so to say that Norman comes out swinging is an understatement. I put the book down for a while because as much as I enjoy the unhinged stuff, that was a bit outside of my comfort zone. But then I found out who Norman Berggren was, and I took a closer look at his street cred, and I was flabbergasted. It turns out this guy is not a theorist at all, in any way, shape, or form, but instead a highly respected scientist and inventor. Of course, I then started to wonder if our community's favorite abstract ancient texts like the Book of Enoch and the Vaminika Sastra might be better read like a sci-fi without the fi. Because if there is any pictorial evidence at all of what those wild-ass codices tried to describe, this would be it, down to the very maintenance of reality itself. After all, the planet Norm was pointing to here is the same one that these ancients say is the king of our physical reality. Norm himself didn't bother with that esoteric stuff, so right off the bat, we have a coincidence to address. Now, it will be impossible for me to show you this evidence without first listing his accomplishments and resume, without which we would have no video outside of an honorable mention of a man who died before his life's work could be recognized. I'll try to make this quick. Norm is not the host of a show on Gaia. Look at his bow tie. He is obviously everyone's grandpa. But even more intriguing, he graduated from Cornell in 1943 and went on to the Navy, where he climbed the ladder faster than a cat with a dog behind it. In only 18 months, he was chief specialist in thermodynamic engineering at Douglas Aircraft. He went on to become a research scientist at NACA Ames Laboratory. Note, this was before the existence of NASA. He helped form Ames in its conception. In fact, everywhere he went, he started some kind of scientific institution. By the time he was 25, he was top of his field and literally set up the first aeronautics industry in America, the foundation of which today's innovations in the field are quite literally built upon. He was then chairman and regional director of the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics. He was the national director of the National Society of Professional Engineers, and he was also the Space and Defense Counsel for the Presidential Task Force. This list goes on. Feel free to read the screen. So he didn't acquire his evidence with his nose in a book like some chump like me would do. The reason these photos exist is because of him. Because his most prominent title was the same as mine when tending to your mom, as director of re-entry, he kept probes from burning up when coming into penetration with the planet's atmosphere. Basically, we can thank him for having this evidence in the first place. If you like the photos from the OG Cassini, thank Norm because he built that puppy. The point here is that when I looked at the first ultrasound of my son in the womb, it made no sense to me. It was just static nonsense. The nurse had to point out each feature to me, patiently showing me the hands and face and eventually the penis. That turns out is always relatively endowed in ratio at that stage of development, making all dads, of course, make the same stupid joke. I couldn't see my son in the ultrasound until the nurse pointed him out because that is her field of expertise. It's her field of expertise because she studies, sees, and points those things out every day. And our nurse, like most nurses, was far more experienced and intelligent than the actual doctor. So when Norman shows us a picture like this and this, we will only be able to see what is there after he runs us through it. The same way that your guitarist friend has to explain why Wes Borland is the greatest unsung hero of guitar riffs, while the rest of the party, without an untrained ear, pretends to not love Limp Bizkit until that fifth Bahama Mama starts to slap. I'll do my best to show you what Norm wanted us to see. Let's take a little tour.
It was my first clue that there was something in space that was different. Okay. I was handed one day a set of data. The guy that gave it to me said, nobody else around here has ever been able to get anything out of these data. And if anybody can, you can.
We have already talked about the ancient occult understandings of Saturn as the outer skin of our reality. But in the 17th century, Galileo and friends began looking at it. You know, the invention of the telescope and all that. As telescopes got better and better, one might assume that some questions would be answered. Nope. Looking at this thing is quite different than looking at any other planets in our hood. Among many anomalies, the rings would change sizes and shape from one viewing to another. Thickness and diameter would be completely different from one week to the next. The most eye-catching changes being drastic shifts in the placement of the ring's gaps. And let's keep this gap thing in mind for later. In the 18th century, it was noted by multiple astronomers that the rings would sometimes cast a shadow, meaning that they had a robust girth. And the next week, but same circumstances, would not cast a shadow, meaning that they were very thin. These anomalies were accompanied by so-called luminous points that, unlike moons, would move on their own accord, changing in direction and speed, like we see ball lightning do on Earth. Of course, this was all blamed on crude telescope quality until the 19th century, when the same anomalies, even the luminous points, persisted. There are too many to list, so let's go with Norm's favorite example. The now famous observations of a light source came on February 9th, 1917. Two astronomers, Maurice Ainslie and John Knight, observed the source independently. During the observations, when the luminous point was in plain view, the light therefrom appeared to be elongated. There was a strange aspect about the traversal itself, seeming to move through the ring plane without difficulty. The luminous point appeared to devour material ahead as it proceeded. Keep in mind that this elongated shape and it devouring material in front of it is a mainstream observation. We haven't gotten to the weird shit yet. Eventually, we finally got the tech to just send a probe up there and get a better look. Keep in mind, this was before NASA realized they could just fake these expeditions in order to line their own personal pockets with our tax dollars. But many older photos from Voyager 1 can actually be corroborated with civilian telescopes, despite a vast difference in clarity. But again, a satellite telescope flyby only created more confusion.
Scientists don't know of any other storm like this to exist anywhere in the universe. Saturn's hexagons are a demonstration of the wonders of our universe is capable of. But it's not the only intriguing feature the planet has to offer. When looking through Voyager's data, scientists noticed something odd: mysterious spokes across the planet's rings. But then something even stranger was discovered. During the Cassini mission, no signs of these ghost-like features were detected, deepening the mystery behind this unexplained phenomenon. A closer observation revealed that the spokes generally have a dark appearance when viewed from above. However, when observed from below, they tend to appear bright. Researchers still don't know for certain what causes these mysterious streaks.
These spokes would produce so-called braids of gigantic electrical discharges that nobody expected. One of its moons, Iapetus, was found to glow 10 times brighter on the sun-shadowed side than on the exposed side. Worst of all, the ring thickness question not only persisted, but got weirder, because Voyager 2 came around and found the rings to be 600 miles thick. That's twice the girth measured previously, and I don't recall a temperature difference from the first time they attempted a measurement. One might argue that the newer image is different because it was sharper, but the technology was not too different from one to the next. And if you think about possible discrepancies in image sharpness, well, a sharper image would cause a thinner line, not a thicker one. So how can we explain vastly different measurements of the same thing? If the change was because of a moon collision, there would be pieces scattered everywhere. But the new mass was tightly organized and fitted into a neatly placed row, like a damn file cabinet. Mother Nature or not, whoever liked it sure did put a ring on it. A lesson you wished you had learned from Beyonce before you lacked the effort to keep the only partner who would ever put up with your bullshit, Sean. And now you've got 100 problems. Also, the gaps between the rings were rapidly changing right before their befuddled eyes. And dude, we haven't even gotten to Norm's pictures yet. All of these anomalies thus far are the mainstream accepted ones. That is important for a very specific reason. As Norm says it best, when new data are received that which do not conform to the fixed ideas, an impediment to progress is experienced, and variations are intolerable. Basically, we are about to see something that a viewer of this channel is well familiar with. When material science gets a result that is impossible, they simply quit the study or fudge the results to make them work within the frame of our expectations. In this case, fudging results was not an option because Saturn is in our sky too. We can see it ourselves. NASA will boldly lie to our faces, yes, but mostly about things they know we cannot see. So in this case, their best move was to quit looking, shut it all down, and ignore it ever happened. Well, not on Grandpa's watch. After all, these photos were his babies. He had a hand in the project and was not going to stay quiet about it. Now, this is the part where he would have been openly ridiculed and mocked like they do Graham and various others who started out as amateurs. Easy targets because they can just say he doesn't have a degree from our selected list of institutions or whatever, and swiftly followed up with calling him racist, and bam, most people buy the smear campaign and it works like a charm. But they knew that doing this to an OG like Norm was not on the menu. It would only bring more unwanted attention to an uphill battle. So silence was the only cover-up available. The book became a rarity and put behind glass. Norm was out of sight and out of mind, and the only press he would get would be from people like this.
Well, did we build it?
Pardon?
Did we build it? Did who built it? The craft.
I don't know who built it.
This is the ring.
That ends up being the ring.
Yeah.
It's
And they're-
hot plasma.
Oh, really? Okay. So, and what your theory is, they're manufacturing it. Is that correct?
It comes, that's the exhaust from this thing.
From the craft?
Yes.
Is it because, are they stationary or are they moving, the craft?
Moving.
You're saying things are getting critical because I'm really curious.
No, I'm saying if they do, and there's a good probability that that is possible,
Uh-huh.
then, hey, you've got to get with it. You can't wait around.
NASA alters their footage coming from the moon, etc.
Is she drinking?
Uranus did not have rings,
That's right.
but now it does.
Right.
See? And so that kind of thing is going on. And we really ought to get to the root of it.
Okay. Do you have a theory on why Uranus suddenly has rings?
I think our grandpa deserved a little bit better. But if you're looking for a new and original baby name for your next daughter, look no further than this woman's pronunciation of Uranus. I know I am probably the last person to be ribbing on someone else's pronunciation, but I mean, come on. Okay, anyway, enough build up. Let's see these plates. Let's kick this party off with a general sense of size comparison to help us realize the utter magnitude of epic proportions we are dealing with. The body of Saturn is 10 Earths in diameter because in America, we will use anything except the metric system. The width of the rings are the size of 6 Earths, or 5,125,400 sperm whales. Let's keep this in mind, knowing that sheer size is just one of those things that we can measure and say out loud, but cannot manually conceptualize with the human mind. Accidentally doing so could cause literal madness. Something else that might cause literal madness is this picture. Conceptualize with the human mind. Accidentally doing so could cause literal madness. Something else that might cause literal madness is this picture. Plate 5 in Norm's book immediately brings a startling sensation to the reader once they finally see what they are looking at. And what we are looking at is often called ring termination, a name for something so outside of our current understanding of the universe that we just choose not to address it. Thus, why we have never heard of it in any science class. Basically, That is not the bottom of the photograph. This is the angle and point at which this particular ring of Saturn at the time of filming stops. But to the astonishment of everyone involved, this is far from a full stop, because this is where the rings seem to grow as they form. Not to be confused with stretching out in length, by the way. No, this ring is emerging. It is coming into being. It seems to be catalyzed by this impossibly straight rod that was seen ejecting matter from itself and into the correct position required to complete a neat and tight-fitting full ring around Saturn. It was as if we caught someone in the act of placing this ring into position. And according to our grandpa Norm, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. But there is that word, probably. If Norm was here, he would politely ask us to remove that word from our equation here, because, as he says himself,
Your theories, you mean?
Now look, this is not a theory when there's data. If I propose something, that is a theory.
Okay, so your data or your conclusions?
Yes, conclusions.
Your conclusions.
this angle is weird because of the photo's position being flat to our perspective. If we turn it like this, we might get a hint as to how to see it. Norm lends us a much needed hand with plate 28. Whatever is ejaculating material particles into the orbit of Saturn is using the gravity of Saturn to its advantage. As the rod-shaped anomaly, or cigar shape, if you will, it is traversing the path of Saturn's orbit the same way we do with Earth satellites. The momentum is perpetuated by the gravity as it ejects a series of individual streamers that fall into a counterclockwise orbit. The angle of 15 degrees that we see from nose to tail situates the new rings into their even spacings, something that would take natural gravity hundreds, maybe thousands of years to process out, if at all. Much like the definition of alchemy, this is a quickening of nature. Perhaps this is a glitch, an isolated fluke, or a photo error. Well, plate 6, 7, and 8 clear up that theory 4 times over, because we are looking at 4 individual photographs showing the same impossibility, right down to the cigar-shaped object that seems to be spraying this new ring material into position. To quote Norm, the implication is that orbital radius of vehicle position is set very precisely in order to have a gap produced. General reluctance to accept viable ring system geometry occurs because of apparent failure to identify a physical mechanism suitable for producing recurrence change, unquote, end quote. And if this is frightening, buckle your seatbelts a bit more securely, because the ejecta emanating from these rods seem to be a form of exhaust. And again, Norm would step in here and rid us of the phrase "seems to be," because in his lengthy time in aerospace engineering, he has, like the nurse looking at an ultrasound, come to know what he is looking at. What he tells us we are looking at is, as he coined it, an electromagnetic vehicle. Vehicles that match anomalous objects photographed even long after his published work and death. When Norm says exhaust, he doesn't mean as a system of propulsion. Think of this exhaust as grass coming out of the side of your lawnmower. What is crazy about the activity happening in these photos is that they adhere to the scientific method, meaning that they are reproducible by anyone with the tech to do so. If you have a powerful enough telescope or the money to send a probe up there, we can see this happening right now. So what are we looking at? What is an electromagnetic vehicle? Inspection of plate 5 indicates that a slender body is orbiting clockwise, and in doing so, deposits a wide trail. This trail, which can be recognized as the A ring, is generated by efflux emanating from nearly the entire length of the body. The efflux is generated along the body sides in the form of streamers. These streamers contribute to the A ring trail. The bulgy appearance of the streamers as they pass over the body suggests a circular cross-section for the body. A light source, somewhat greater in diameter than the body, is positioned below the right end. This source is attached to the body with interconnecting emissions, turning to an orange-red arc along the top edge. According to one of Isaac Newton's laws of motion, forces can occur only in action-reaction pairs. The reaction of the body to the action of the emissions is to move the body, presumably in a direction so as to complete the ring. This physically inherent mobile capability is justification for calling the body a vehicle. The ratio of apparent body length to thickness is about 13:1. If the description we just read was pulled from a single photo, we would have something kind of weird at best. The fact of the matter is that whatever this thing is, vehicle or not, it is captured looking the same way to this description every time it is photographed. But it also matches many of the early descriptions of anomalous object activity we read about a moment ago from Herschel, Knight, and Ainsley, the three of which reported their sightings independent of each other, and all three, of course, independent of our Grandpa Norm here, all taken in different places and times. But what about the early reports of changes in ring size, thickness, and most importantly, spacing? Well, we have a perfect corroboration in that regard as well. Plates 5 and 6 reveal that width of the Cassini division occurs neither accidentally nor with exact repeatability. The basic spacing depends upon the radius at which a mobile vehicle orbits with respect to the B ring. A substantial degree of variability in character of the trailing flux can alter the radial location of the inner edge of the A ring. Also, the extent of flux emission along the length of a vehicle can influence the width of the Cassini division. These possibilities for differences explain the variability in measurements by different observers over the years. Plate 7 shows formation of the Icke division. In the plate, the A and B rings as well as the Cassini division can be recognized. Once again, a vehicle is found depositing an orbital trail. Were the vehicle located at a slightly shorter radius, the gap would be lessened. Inspection of the vehicle reveals numerous jets issuing from many different positions along the body. A fan of 3 jets appears to form the inboard part of the trailing efflux. Each jet appears to consist of a series of bulbous swellings. Such swellings are indicative of the form of electrically charged flows known as pinched plasmas. But there are more than one of these vehicles, and I guess you'll have that on these big jobs. Norm states, this second vehicle, shown in plate 8, substantiates the process by which the outer A ring and the Icke division are formed. In the plate, the Cassini division, the entire breadth of the A ring and the Icke division can be discerned. A conclusion is reached that the A ring outer annulus can be constructed with vehicles having different lengths and emission patterns. Therefore, the Icke gap can be located almost anywhere or not at all within the A ring, depending upon length and positioning of the vehicles forming the inner and outer annuli. In view of this possibility, the difficulty of early observers in pinpointing a single radial location of the Icke division is now readily understandable. Inability to obtain unanimous opinion for ring thickness is also explained. Penetration of the stream through the A ring vaporizes in-path material and renders the ring discontinuous. And remember our earlier mainstream observations about these luminous points that would easily go through rings and seem to devour anything in its path. It was an unexplained anomaly to mainstream science. Here, Norman seems to have an answer for that. The C ring and the F ring formations apparently depend upon the presence of a nearby vehicle. At birth, the A and B rings appear to have electromagnetic properties. In view of the generating mechanism, heretofore, confusing variations in observational results now become explicable.
The sun is primary of the solar system right now. About 15,000 years ago, it was Saturn. The position of Saturn was in a northerly position. It was the sun of this solar system. Saturn's orbit takes 29 and a half years, just as the moon relates to the Earth in 29 and a half day cycles. And the moon is very influential over this orb, the Earth. Well, Saturn does the same with the sun. And astrologers know that when Saturn is in transit, where you might have some certain frictions like afflictions, when Saturn comes to those returns, those transits and stuff like that, people notice it. They notice it. Astrologers know the effect of Saturn. They know the effect of the moon, primarily. These two are the most powerful, without a doubt, in the solar system. In mythology, you'll find that one is electric and one is magnetic. All right? It's always like that. The relationship is always like that. El is one of those words that turns up in the mythologies all the time. You have Emmanuel, Israel, the Bible, Babel, the bell for Baal that you have in the chapel and steeple and cathedral, and Elohim or Elios. But Saturn also gets the title of El. Saturn is known as Baal or Baal or Bel or just plain old El. And the virgin shall give a child, and we shall call his name Emmanuel. Well, Emmanuel, he's got a friend, a dark friend called Magdalene. Interesting about that, isn't it? El and Mag, electricity and magnetism.
Throughout our tour so far, we have seen reoccurring mention of massive electrical discharges and pinched plasmas. We are, of course, also dealing with unimaginable magnitudes of magnetism.
I will just quickly say that, we're only about less than a week away, I believe, of one of those 29 and a half year Saturn cycle shifting.
I am reminded that Saturn was once called El by our ancient ancestors that seem to have had so much more of this stuff figured out than we give them credit for. If we have a look-see at plate 16, we might be impressed by the sheer size of these giant lightning bolts. Here we have a bolt of lightning the length of California, or 18,300 sperm whales. Now, we are not saying that this is the result of electromagnetic vehicles. Plasmatic discharges are a natural occurrence that is fascinating on its own. But it does seem that Norm's EM vehicles have a lot to do with plasma and electricity on Saturn. Perhaps they are harvesting energy, but this conclusion almost seems too easy. Like every sci-fi alien movie ever, we are just projecting what we humans do onto something otherworldly. Perhaps what we are looking at is more of a maintenance of sorts. If the reality of the cosmos is hinged on electricity and magnetism, and Saturn has been seen as the keeper of all physical matter, the king of this world by all of our ancient mythology and esoteric tradition, perhaps we can make a connection that has been hiding in plain sight all along. But let's hold on to that thought for a moment and explore this vulgar display of power. In Norman's book, plates 17 through 22 demonstrate pointedly the massive power of electromagnetic vehicles. Two luminous sources, each about the size of Earth's moon, dramatize the vehicular capability and awesome power in the accustomed framework of human beings. Looking at still images is one thing, but to have seen these so-called luminous sources probably left quite a few jaws on the floor, because we have to keep in mind that it is the combination of all these rapid fire snapshots like stop motion would have formed the complete picture that Norm and his team of scientists who bailed out on him would have seen. Images so epic and grandiose in size and power that we can only speculate as to the how and why. Which brings us to this haunting photo. Again, to an untrained eye such as mine, I don't see anything more than the rainbow band track from Mario Kart running across the length of Saturn's rings. Norm sees something different. One of the most massive displays of power is a large-scale disruption in Saturn's rings, extending across the entire ring system. This dramatically colorful display presented in plate 17 gives the rings an appearance of being shifted rightward within a narrow band. A discontinuity band such as this is rare in photographs of the A and B rings. Hence, the phenomenon likely is aperiodic and of fairly brief duration. In addition to the multicolored band, very narrow parallel markings can be seen extending chordwise across the rings in several locations. Further, two luminous sources appear in the right-hand sector of the rings. Noteworthy too is the completely filled Cassini gap. Usually this gap appears mostly as empty space. An astounding 136,000 miles is spanned by the colorful band, roughly the equivalent of 17 Earth diameters, or 14,456,852 sperm whales. Obviously, a disturbance of such great magnitude requires immensely enormous energy. Presence of electromagnetic vehicles on the right side of the ring system in plate 17 is clued by two luminous sources. Plate 18 identifies these sources and pinpoints vehicles contributing to the apparent ring shift and to a filled Cassini gap. Involved are at least 5 vehicles, locations of which are numbered 1 through 5. All these interconnected events are occasioned by the presence of an electromagnetic vehicle. The narrow discontinuity band across the entire ring system is aligned quite in a straight line. Several independent events acting in concert are required to create the linear uniform width discontinuity band across the tremendous span of chordwise opposite rings. Ordinarily, only a single causative agent is dominantly responsible for an event. Here, however, at least 7 powerful agents of like kind are involved. In this situation, intelligent coordination would appear to be a more reasonable presumption than the chance occurrence of numerous simultaneous events. Even were the band caused by a single exceptionally large unit, the discontinuity band can be regarded as something of a big show. The uniquely colorful band probably holds the distinction of having been constructed deliberately. Formation of the cross-system band and generation of the A and B rings both imply that indigenous to electromagnetic vehicles is a portentous controlling power. So obviously the joke came up earlier about, every video game that has that behind the character perspective and racing games or whatever, they always have that rainbow track in space some way or another. Kind of, I guess, they get their inspiration from mythology or possibly the powerful collected unconscious kind of replays these stories to us in our creative endeavors and arts today. But speaking of mythology, it's funny how we have the allegory of these rainbow bands or rainbow bridges in space. Our ancients talked about them all the time. Particular sections of our mythology, indigenous people speak of these rainbow bridges occurring in Saturn, near Saturn. The Dogon in particular speak about, we've talked about that, they talk about a bridge which connects our realm to the outer realms of chaos, that of which goes through Saturn. Could it be that some of these allegories aren't just allegories. It's also worth mentioning that there are a few cultures that would call Saturn the rainbow star. Now, we won't be able to break down all of the plates from this book, and this video should really be considered just an appetizer. But a few quick honorable mentions would be plate 26, where we see a massive plasmatic discharge in the form of a braid shooting from what is presumed to be an electromagnetic vehicle, but certainly something solid and thus anomalous. We can actually see a spurt of the plasma disappearing behind this strange solid object at the bottom. Another honorable mention would be plate 25. It shows a discontinuation in the thinnest band of Saturn, the F ring, seemingly shepherded by this luminous source that was seen hovering around the rings at the time. And plate 20, where we see something that's actually not surprising at all. If you zoom in close enough, you'll see that they put in a Dollar General at the Cassini gap. It is safe to say that we can only speculate as to the purpose of this activity. Even if one denies Norm's notion of alien activity, we are still less than ants, less than bacteria compared to this cosmic happening. I only hesitate barely to say that if these happenings in the rings of Saturn are not intelligently made, not artificial, a natural occurrence that would cause such finely tuned and precise, detailed alignments, that would almost be more astounding than the previous notion. If it is a natural occurrence, then frankly, it's more weird. And that's more startling.
Lockheed at that time, and was there some incident that happened that made you want to leave?
It wasn't that. Let's just say that you're confined to one room, day after day, year after year, same walls, so forth. That's claustrophobia.
I see.
I had to sign my life away for 30 years.
Is it still in effect right now?
No,
No? So could you tell me anything?
no.
You can't?
Mm.
Why? What would happen?
I'd prefer not to find out.
The average person to lay eyes on these photos and hear this perspective might be quick to dismiss it. But there is a group of very powerful people who take these things extremely seriously. And those people are the CIA. Everyone here is familiar with the Gateway process and Project Stargate. Those are the popular ones. But there is another lesser known declassified document called Psychotronic Universe and Gravitation. You can print these out yourself. Go up to FedEx. They're available now, declassified, quietly declassified. The objective of these reports are downright mystical, where they study the interaction of consciousness and matter, utilization of thermodynamics, electromagnetic force, and gravitation. And, well, remember what Grandpa Norm's Cornell degree was for. Exactly this. Now, this once very top secret document would have to be an episode all its own. But I bring it up here because the scientists working for the CIA once upon a time, or still today, took very seriously the combination of consciousness and material science, and were not at all shy about references to ancient religious texts and, as they phrased it, Eastern teachings as a comparable source of information about our understanding of the universe. The point is that our modern material scientist rock stars will scoff at the study of ancient texts and global mythology, certainly much more at Norman's work. While the same organization that perpetuates that scoffing turn out to be the very ones who find great necessity in those very things. Dare I remind us that it was the CIA who coined the term conspiracy theory as a coverall for all of these things to kind of debunk them in the first place. Meanwhile, they're going ham on it. But as we have seen in several videos now, the ancient texts seem to be describing modern notions like plasma and electromagnetism. So we can't help but wonder about the ancient notions of Saturn's orbit as a celestial sphere that encompasses our biological view of reality. When comparing those things, many of which we have covered on previous episodes on this channel, with Norman's evidence and frankly confident claims, I can't help but wonder if we were just witnessing the custodians of our physical reality firsthand. And then if we combine both of those with the practically now mainstream hypothesis of a simulated reality, the holographic universe theory, we might venture out to think that Saturn is an important part of the hard drive of which the software of our consciousness is programmed. Thus, our reality would be programmed. Is that crazy to say? We created TVs. Humans did this. TVs would seem like magic to us only a little while ago. The way they used to work is a signal caught from a satellite dish would be beamed into the TV set and decoded into a format that we can see. If you destroy the TV, the signal is still there, in the air but invisible. So the person we see on the screen is obviously not inside the TV. I'm obviously not inside your TV, computer screen, or phone right now. It's a signal. Just 3 episodes ago, we spoke of human bodies as being vessels for the soul or otherwise spiritual beings. What if we weren't the first ones to invent the concept of the TV? Is that insane? Probably, but in a raw, as above, so below fashion, I can't help but wonder if Saturn is the tool used as a satellite dish to beam a signal of consciousness into the human body like a damn television set. Silly, right? Well, frankly, if we keep perpetuating negative reactions to this kind of wonderment, we will spin in circles on a hamster wheel, going nowhere forever. Whether this notion is real, half true, or completely whack, we will sit stagnant with our heads in the sand, never finding out a damn thing if we continue to persecute experts who desire to find out what's going on up there and within. Up there and within. The inner reaches of outer space. Because I'll tell you one thing that is for damn sure, those two things are connected way more than we have been taught. The man who first hypothesized germs was ridiculed as superstitious by mainstream scientists of the day. They were like, this guy is saying that there are invisible supernatural forces.
Oh, please don't be telling me that this guy believes germ theory.
Making us sick. He continued to insist that he was onto something, and the scientists had enough. He was clearly a madman, so they locked him away in a jail cell where he died, probably from germs. There is a man named David Icke, who, love him or hate him, is a ridiculous dude who once got in big trouble for claiming that a transmission signal from Saturn amplified by the moon pierces our world and is responsible for our biological limitations to this survival mode of consciousness. Well, he got in trouble for saying other things too. But the coincidence occurring here between his research and Norman's body of work cannot be ignored. All the while, we have a global notion from ancient peoples that Saturn itself is responsible for time. I'm not saying that any which individual is correct. What I'm saying is that each individual component is easy to ignore. even when finding out that the government has been secretly studying these things all along under the title of psychotronics as a subcategory that they literally call new physics. Because one might argue that they have always pumped out disinformation. True that. But these documents were kept quiet and only silently released while we were distracted with you know what. And it fits right into the bodies of work by Icke and our new friend Norm, like a damn puzzle piece. All the while plausibly denying the credibility of both, we turn around and we find out that these truth-seeking men are probably the ones that the CIA got the idea from in the first place. What a mind f***. I don't know if those dates work out, but anyway, they were studying the same thing, which is why I think whether or not we believe in Norman's theory, bringing it to a modern platform is important. Just like Norm has shown us that one weird-ass picture does not qualify enough evidence to make assertions of alien life. But when anomalies streamline into a specific order that become a larger picture, a wild-ass hypothesis becomes impossible to ignore. That is, unless it is your job to ignore them. But the same is true for the larger scope of the esoteric and paranormal. It is easy to dismiss each individual happening as a fluke. But when you find out that ancient texts, conspiracy theorists, the government-funded CIA, individual intuitions, the fact that astrology affects biological matter, and so on, strange photographic evidence by Norm here. It all belligerently point in the same direction. Those individual puzzle pieces fit in such a way that we can no longer avoid seeing the forest instead of individual trees. When Norman exposed his work, he was met with silence. And he didn't have the internet that we do now. But with the internet that we have now, there is so damn much to see and hear that we find ourselves drowning in information. So damned if you do, damned if you don't, I guess. With that being said, I don't know if there are gigantic planet-sized electromagnetic vehicles creating and or harvesting our reality. And the notion is enough to make anyone lose sleep over the implications. But I am willing to sacrifice that sleep and peace of mind for either one of two reasons. One, this could end up being another valuable piece of the biggest puzzle we have. And two, if I can take up the torch that this man attempted to use to bring some light to the world and pass it to you, for you to decide for yourself, I feel like I'm doing my job as a translator of the esoteric. But whether this idea is real or not, it deserves to be looked at a bit deeper than we have. Not only does it stir the imagination out of its comfort zone, to grow and pave a way for a wider view and bigger consciousness, but more importantly, because of how many ideas we accept as truth today that upon first appearance were just too wild. Quantum entanglement, heliocentrism, meditation, germs, the list goes on. Each one of these and so many more were damn near.
Okay, dude. Thanks for that. All right. So what I want to do now, I want to see what David Icke's got to say. He was on Jake Shields earlier, but he was talking about Saturn. So I just want to see if I can get to the right spot here.
Satanists have also worshipped black cubes. You see the black cubes. The Jews put it on their head. The weird one that got me was in Mecca, giant black cubes with the that was bizarre. But I guess you look at the Saudi family, lots of people have, accused them of being crypto Jews and whatnot.
Well, the black cube of Mecca is a classic. I mean, they even get people to sit. There's a picture in the roadmap of it, of people sitting in concentric circles that look just like the rings of Saturn.
They're circling it, yeah.
Yeah, these symbols give off the frequency they represent. So if a black cube and a six-pointed star and a hexagon is the frequency of Saturn, then that's the frequency they give off, even though you're not aware of it. They're giving off that frequency, and it's impacting upon people. And Saturn turns up everywhere, and we are living in this sea, this ocean of different frequencies that are seeking to suppress our state of consciousness and our state of awareness. The point is, as I go into in the books, because this is not all bad news or anything like, but to get to the answers, you've got to see the scale of how it works, because then the answers become clear. I mean, what are the answers if you're only seeing this at the political level? What? Vote for party A and then
new politicians, yeah.
I mean,
the next guy who promised to do things.
Yeah, so in seeing the scale, the panorama of the control system, you actually start to see the answers. And the question that we can start with on that is, who am I? What is the nature of who we are? And most people will say, well, I'm a body, and it's black or it's brown or it's white, and it's this religion, that religion, that income bracket, that culture, whatever. But the body is just a vehicle. It's a vehicle for the true I, consciousness, to experience this reality. So if my consciousness, your consciousness, everybody's consciousness is vibrating so fast as a field that I couldn't pick those glasses up, because the difference in the frequency of the glasses and the frequency of my consciousness is vastly different. I couldn't pick them up. So we take on these outer shells that are resonating within the frequency band that we want to interact with. And that's what the body is. And the body is decoding the matrix.
Thanks for watching Fight Back Podcast. If you like the show,
yeah, you guys sign up to Jake's show, Fight Back. I just want to jump back and maybe see where he gets into Saturn. Maybe it was straight away.
They used to have a Star of David on their home. You look at the so-called planet Saturn, which I say is actually a dwarf star, but and you look at the rings, and in my books over the years, we could go into this in detail in another time, but there was a guy who was into this whole high technological area, and he started looking. His whole career was in high tech and what have you, and he started looking at the pictures coming back from the Voyager spacecraft of Saturn, and then the Cassini craft that went later and was eventually crashed after a long time into Saturn. And he was looking at the rings of Saturn, and he was seeing them changing from one picture to another. I mean, like in minutes. Some of them.
Minutes, right? Yeah.
He also identified sort of craft that he called electromagnetic vehicles that were actually forming the rings. And when you expand it out and out and out and out into more and more information and knowledge about Saturn and its history and its reason for being this focus of secret society attention, those rings are giving off a frequency. They're giving off a frequency that's part of the suppression of human consciousness, human awareness. I think it was in 2009, they found another ring around Saturn that was like millions of miles away from it. That was another ring that they couldn't explain. And what I'm saying in the books is that this frequency is coming across, and we're picking it up. You know, you broadcast a frequency powerful enough, it will travel enormous amounts of what we call distance. There's a lot more to know about that. And it can impact upon perception. And then you start to see the things like the symbols and the sigils, as they call them, of Saturn, and which these elite are using all the time.
Yeah.
And those symbols of Saturn, for reasons I explained with the cymatics, are generating the frequency being given off by Saturn. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard recordings of the sound of Saturn that Saturn gives off. You can.
I haven't. No.
Well, you can get that on the internet.
I'll look that up. I'm curious.
If you want a sound that sounds dark and satanic, well, you just listen to the sound of Saturn that's giving off all the time. And you know, at the north pole of Saturn, there's a permanent storm that forms a hexagram. Sorry, a hexagon. A hexagon.
Yeah, real quick. They say it's a storm. How do they say the storm? They say the storm's just staying in that hexagram position. I was confused by that because it's a very clear hexagram. I saw the pictures in your book. They just say it just always stays like that.
It's a hexagon, and it's a permanent storm. And when I say permanent, they found it with the Voyager, and by the time they crashed Cassini, it was still going. And it's said to be created by winds, but the winds go off in at an angle that forms a hexagon at the north pole of Saturn.
It's very strange. It looks just like the Star of David. Yeah, people should look this up. It's just sitting right there.
Go on the internet, you'll see pictures of it. Now, what is that? And it just so happens that these storms, and there's like an eye storm at the South Pole as well, that looks like an eye, and they reflect the cycles of the radio frequencies being given off by Saturn, and it's you put it all together, and ancient and modern, and I have done in some books at enormous length, and you start to realize that Saturn is actually not just a random planet, but is actually fundamentally affecting human consciousness and human awareness, as is the moon, by the way, but that's another story.
Yeah, right. That's it's definitely confusing. The whole Saturn thing, and the cube is basically the same.
Yeah, that's what we listened to earlier. So there we have it, guys. Another episode of Cosmic Surfers, and that's what we're doing. So first one comes from a Vision Quest, and Black Plague. And apologies for the light and the camera, and then Saturn. So thanks to those guys, and always good with David Icke. Okay, much love. This is Cosmic Service. Bye for now.